Welcome to Esoteric Essay, revealing humanity's biggest secrets, one essay at a time. Seek, and ye shall find.
Hey everybody, how you doing today? You read the title of this video correctly. This is gonna blow your mind. This is an amazing, fascinating subject, and I highly encourage you guys to finish this video through to the end, because this one's gonna just shock you completely. I mean, what you've been told about the dinosaurs is a lot of lies, so this one's gonna change the way you think about a lot of things. And this also has some connections to my essays number 2 and 4, so I highly suggest you go find those. First of all, I need to tell you a little bit about myself. My name's James, and I'm the author of a series of essays that I've written, published, and shared all over the internet in various places like Facebook. I have a private group. I highly encourage all of you guys to join, because all of my essays are there for everybody to read. All the printed essays, and then I have my videos there too. And I'm also on Twitter. I share on Twitter, so my little Twitter thing will be over there. It's at Esoteric Essays. And I have my YouTube channel here, so I encourage all of you guys to like, share, subscribe, and comment. I love hearing the comments. Some of them are amazing. Some of you guys are very smart, so I try to answer everybody, whether it's here, on Twitter, or in my private group on Facebook. There's a lot of people in the group on Facebook. There's over 1,000 people there, so I highly encourage all of you to come over there and join. There are a lot of smart people there. Alright, we're going to jump right into this. This is Esoteric Essay number 7. This one is all about the dinosaurs. Animal experimentation and genetic modification in the deep past. The real serpents and dragons of myth and legend and their true origins. Atlantis Aztlan Tartarus. I have come to these conclusions from my personal experience and my research that include maps, ancient, old, and new, including the esoteric and the hidden. There's a lot of hidden ones. Ancient esoteric writings from various secret libraries, church documents, both public and hidden, ancient Azteca codices in the public domain and in private hands, Aztec and Mayan hieroglyphs, Native American myths, legends, and oral histories. Also many other cultures' ancient teachings about ancient serpents and the dragons. I will first ask you, the reader of this essay, or the viewer of this video, to completely forget everything you have ever been told about dinosaurs to date. All of it. Just forget it all. Everything you have been told about these creatures are lies and half-truths, meant to mislead and confuse you about their true origins and these creatures and what they really are. First off, the word dinosaur was originally used and created by Sir Richard Owen in and around 1841. This man created the word to describe extinct giant lizard/dragon/serpents. The word dinosaur was created by using a combination of two Greek words, Dinios, which means terrible, and sauros, which means lizard, so terrible lizard. The very first official finding of a dinosaur bone/fossil was made by a man named Robert Plot in 1677. But for years, this person's best guess as to what he found was a bone of a giant ancient human. Years later, a professor at Oxford University correctly identified this fossil as that of an extinct dinosaur. That's the official story. Here is a super abridged version of the official story. About 400 years ago, some guy found a giant bone. Over the next few hundred years, we found a lot more of these giant lizard bones. So many that we had to invent a new name for these creatures. We are told that these beasts roamed the earth hundreds of millions of years ago, and they were wiped out by a huge catastrophe when a giant asteroid slammed into the planet and killed them all. All of that story is a lie. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. We have known about these giant creatures for a long time. They are in ancient Native American and Aztec petroglyphs. In their petroglyphs. How do they have these things in their petroglyphs if we only discovered them 400 years ago? And also spoken about in oral myths and legends. These creatures are depicted in Egyptian hieroglyphs. There are carvings of them in ancient Hindu and Chinese temples. Just total carvings of dinosaurs in the temples that are thousands of years old. But we officially found the first bones like 400 years ago. This story is not making no sense already. There are depictions of ancient Aztecs riding on the back of what look like Stegosaurus and Triceratops on 2,000 to 3,000 year old pottery found hidden in chambers under some of the Mexican pyramids and other ancient sites. We used to call these creatures by different names. Before we had the name dinosaur forced on us, society as a whole used to call these beasts dragons and giant serpents. One of the biggest frauds and lies about the dinosaurs are their age. These animals are nowhere near as old as they have told us, not even freaking close. These animals have been spoken of in many writings under different names. Some of these texts are highly guarded and secret, but others are available to everyone right this second. The more esoteric texts go into more details about these animals' connections to certain lost civilizations. But they are not needed to prove or understand what these animals really are or where they came from. These are the perverted, hybrid animals that are spoken about in the Bible, the Book of Enoch, the Babylonian cuneiform tablets, the Quran, the Torah, the Zohar. Dinosaurs are the genetically engineered hybrid animals that we created with a technology that has been lost to time. Think modern day CRISPR-Cas9, but super advanced. So you really got to understand what this CRISPR-Cas9 technology is that we have. This is genetic modification that they're doing. And people are using this to make dogs glow in the dark. I'm not kidding. Look it up. They're making super animals. They're trying to make themselves into superhumans. And you can actually order this on the internet and do it in your garage today. And they've been doing this for years. But I'm saying there was a technology like this a long time ago where we genetically engineered these dinosaur creatures. These are the ones that they talk about in the Bible, that nobody understands what they're talking about. Some of these animals are actually alive and well and still living with us to this very day. Yep. Sadly, most are extinct, but not all. Some of the smaller dragons have survived and are known as the Komodo dragons. One of the smaller breeds of the giant serpents that are still slithering around in South America is known as the giant anacondas. We are told that this snake can reach a length of 27 feet. This is also not true, and this snake can get up to 4 times larger than this. These snakes can get truly massive, but the larger and older they get, the deeper they live underwater in marshy areas, in river systems, in the rainforests. They do. These giant snakes rarely come out, but they sometimes do and feed on animal wildlife, and sometimes the random stray human. That's why some people just disappear in some of these tribes. Some of the tribes still worship these things if you go deep into the rainforests. This is also why people will just vanish and disappear in some of these secluded areas. There really are legends of these huge ancient snakes in some of these forest tribal areas, and some of these indigenous people still worship and give sacrifices to these giant snakes. This would be one of the reasons for all the giant snake worshipping going on in ancient Mexico a long time ago. But it goes even deeper than this, and I will explain a little further in this essay. There are a few more weird accounts of giant mythical creatures that were once supposed to roam this planet that didn't make a lot of sense unless you start to think a little differently from the mainstream brainwashing taught to you by your local government and school systems that are working on their own agendas. One of these creatures would be the mythical Kraken. of old, spoken about by some of the most respected and revered sea captains. There are accounts of a huge, massive squid that would completely envelop older ships and attack them. Very few got away, and the ones that did were turned into myth and legend in the stories of crazy men. These squids were and are still very real. Sometimes chunks of them wash up on shore or end up in fishermen's nets. They actually caught a small one that is about 60 to 80 feet long on video not too long ago for the first time. These get much, much larger, and they live in the deep, deep oceans and really love to live in the giant underwater cave and cavern systems that are underwater. There used to be a lot more of these giant squids than there are today. And that's why some of the giants used to venture out and attack our large wooden boats 400 to 1200 years ago. We have polluted our oceans so badly that many of them have died or have been driven very, very deep, and they rarely surface any longer. Sometimes they surface and they grab hold of a smaller ship and crush it and drag it underwater. Some of these very mysterious boat disappearances and sinkings in places like the Bermuda Triangle are really caused by these giant creatures that are not supposed to exist any longer, but they actually do. These kraken are not myth, and they are not fantasies either. If you have looked at or studied any of our larger whales that are known to exist today, you will quickly notice that some whales have horrible gash marks, scratches, slashes, and tears all over their bodies. Not all of them, but a lot of them do, and normally it's the larger of the whales, the ones that venture the deepest into the ocean. Most people ignore these wounds, but the official reason normally given for these are shark bites or getting tangled in fishing nets, or some new weird story about like the windmills somehow killing and scratching all the whales. Anything other than the giant krakens that live way down in the ocean. So most people ignore these wounds, but the official reason normally given for these are shark bites or getting tangled in fishing lines. This is not correct or true. The wounds found on some of these whales are the result of a near-death experience the whale had with one of these absolutely gigantic kraken squids that still live deep in the unreachable areas of our oceans and inner oceans. There's inner oceans too. There's not just the ocean that we have polluted and destroyed. There's very large inner under oceans that is full of weird life that we don't ever see. Imagine a 300 to 400 foot long octopus that's highly intelligent, basically like a giant brain, with 8 redwood-sized limbs that are basically solid muscle, and completely covered in basketball-sized suction cups that have a sharp hook-like tooth inside of each one. These giant arms grab onto a whale or a boat and crush it and drag it deep into the ocean, where it uses its tree trunk limbs to force whatever it caught into a giant bird-like beak that's razor sharp and the size of a Volkswagen Pug. It's not surprising that this creature is almost impossible to find. If you do stumble upon it, you are more than likely dead. Or people call you crazy sailors and you're just making up stories like they did with all the people that used to run into these much more often before we have metal-hulled ships and weapons and weird sonar and all this weird stuff that drives them away and keeps them away. It would be one of the smartest animals on the planet, possibly the largest and strongest. If it's like many other octopi and squid, and it can secrete a black ink to hide itself, it can possibly change its shape, size, and color in order to camouflage itself, and would probably be one of the fastest animals on the planet. moving at 1 to 200 miles an hour under the water. This is like a huge, horrific, scary beast. And if they still exist, which I'm pretty sure they do, and that's what explains a lot of our weird older attacks, and still some of the stuff on the whales like I described. So sorry about my Kraken sidetrack. Now back to the genetically modified animals we once called dragons and giant serpents, but now we call dinosaurs. All the carbon dating ages we have been given for these dinosaur bones and fossils are lies. These animals are much younger than we have been told. There were a huge amount of these genetically altered animals on the planet a mere 10,000 years ago, give or take a few years. This would coincide with the destruction of the last supercivilization that was once rumored to be on this planet, Atlantis Aztlan. There's lots of different names by different cultures. Some of the dragons / giant serpents / dinosaurs were genetically created super animals used to feed massive amounts of people and also used like we use animals today in farming and agriculture. I also say there are highly guarded texts that speak of these animals being used as weapons in ancient wars. More on this later. So, I put so in here. I say so a lot, I'm sorry. So, carbon dating is completely wrong and fraudulent. I can prove this, but it is very boring and mind-numbing and involves lots of made-up numbers that can be manipulated in hundreds of different ways. Here is something for you to look into. C14 carbon dating. C14. If dinosaurs are really millions of years old, then there would be no trace of C14 in the dinosaur bones. None. These are millions of years old. This carbon would be long gone after only 1 million years, not to mention hundreds of millions of years, like we are told. Every dinosaur bone ever tested has large amounts of C14 in them. I urge you all to look into this little pesky fact for yourselves, because this alone proves the official story to be a lie. But there's even more proof that it's easier to follow. Please, follow me there. Almost all early dinosaur bone discoveries had one thing in common. All the bones were highly radioactive. Many early dinosaur bones had to be coated in very thick lead paint to shield museum patrons from the radioactivity. Many museums had to make molded copies of some skeletons when they found out how radioactive some of these bones actually were. This has always baffled mainstream science, and it's really not spoken about or commented on, but it's true. These radioactive dinosaur bones are a direct result of ancient advanced weapons being used to attack the food supply of a warring nation in the fabled time of Atlantis. These battles are spoken about in books like the Mahabharata, the Babylonian tablets, the Bible, and many other myths and legends and writings. Some dinosaur bones are highly radioactive because some of them were killed with super advanced ancient weapons during a horrible time of massive war. This radioactivity messes with any attempt to carbon date anything. You will instantly get crazy figures like hundreds of millions of years old. This was used to science's advantage to mislead us all. This is not the only problem that academia has had a hard time explaining when spinning their story about the true dragons. I am going to get into the juicy stuff. Literally, listen, this is crazy. That proves dinosaurs are much younger than we have been told. And proof is really easy to see with your own eyes thanks to an episode of 60 Minutes that aired a few years ago. Just Google this phrase and you can see this interview that let the cat out of the bag. So 60 Minutes, dinosaur bones, soft tissue. So Google that phrase and see the videos. You heard this correctly. They have discovered soft tissue in many dinosaur bones found scattered in large piles all across the center of the United States of America, and many other places, but we're going to just talk about here for now. This would be absolutely impossible if these bones were really hundreds of millions of years old, like we are told. To explain this story as quickly as possible, the more recent bones discovered in America have soft, rotting tissue inside of them. It was first the fossil gemstone cutters that noticed this when cutting and polishing dinosaur bones for jewelry. When they cut or polished some bones, they had a bad rotten egg smell when they were cutting and polishing these things on their spinning wheels. It would heat up and it would stink like sulfur. If these bones were hundreds of millions of years old, this would be impossible. There'd be nothing. There'd be no soft tissue. People started cutting into some of the more recent dino discoveries out in the Dinosaur National Monument from the huge ranches that have piles and piles of dead dinosaurs popping out of the ground and just lying all over the place. Tens of thousands of them. People have been doing experiments on them themselves, trying to see what's really going on here. One scientist took a piece of a dinosaur bone and dropped it into a solution meant to dissolve the bone. After the bone was completely gone, there was this mushy little mess left. These are the blood cells and the vessels and some soft tissue that are in the bone. That was what was left. This should be impossible unless dinosaurs/dragons are much younger than we have been told, which totally is the case. The truth is finally coming to light that proves what I've been saying for a while now. These bones are really 10 to 20,000 years old, and this would make total sense seeing there was a huge civilization living directly under this exact area for thousands of years and using the surface to graze and feed their huge herds of genetically altered animal hybrids they once used as foodstuff, animal labor, and eventually weapons of war. I write more about these underground cities in essay number 2 and 4, so I highly encourage you to look into these. These are the underground cities of Aztlan that the Aztecs spoke of. And the same ones the Hopi talk about when they say they used to live underground and they emerged, and the ant people and all that stuff. These are the same things that they're talking about, these underground cities. These animals were fed with some of the genetically modified megafauna of myth and legend. This is why there are highly protected forests in many places, including the giant forests of the Americas. This helps explain the giant sequoias and redwoods, and them being some of the last remnants of the mythical megafauna of Atlantis and even earlier civilizations. This also helps explain the massive overgrown cities of South America and the Amazon. The Amazon soil is still a puzzle to modern science. Yep, they have no clue. It grows extremely strange superplants that are far larger than normal. These plants have completely overgrown entire ancient cities and make our modern cities look small in comparison. Science has been trying to reproduce this soil for years, and all attempts have failed. If you research this super soil, you will find scientists talking about it in videos and interviews and some written, published papers. This soil is also ancient lost Atlantean technology, and it was used for many things. This is spoken of in some of the more protected and guarded hidden texts. The Aztec also spoke about a lot of this in their ancient writings, and so did the Maya and the Olmec. Many of their written writings and oral teachings were utterly destroyed for saying these exact same things. Some evidence has survived in their statues and petroglyphs and in their surviving hidden writings that are hidden under the Vatican and in the few groups' secret societies and their private libraries. Some of these hidden and guarded texts speak of strange supernatural abilities of its ancient rulers, /gods, /angels, /rulers. They command and have the ability to completely control some of these ancient genetically modified super animals, /dragons, /giant serpents, /dinosaurs. So basically, there's texts that say that some of these, like, ancient gods that we hear talk about, they could control some of these animals somehow. I mean, it's with technology. And so there's a lot of really weird writings about this stuff. This is why some of these ancient rulers were known as serpent gods or dragon kings or dragon lords, because of their seemingly magical abilities to control these huge beasts in the ancient times, long before the giant wars that caused the massive earthquakes that utterly destroyed the civilization we now call Atlantis, that all resulted in a giant flood after huge earthquakes. These ancient god-like rulers / fallen angels were using advanced technology to genetically modify everything, including the animals. Technology in advanced medicines for much longer lives. That's why they talk about some people living hundreds of years. Technology that gave them complete control over some of the hybrid animals they created. Just imagine an Atlantean Aztec character named Quetzalcoatl having secret, lost technology that gave him the ability to completely control a half dozen of these really large giant serpents / anacondas. I mean, there's writings that talk about this kind of stuff. And there's lots of legends and oral histories that have been passed down for 10,000 years from some of these ancient families that still know all of these stories that I've met and talked to. And it's like an honor to even be told some of this stuff. And so they have these legends that these are what this god Quetzalcoatl character was able to do with some of these animals. And he was using technology that they thought he was a god. So imagine 1,000 years ago, this little Atlantean dude showing up in ancient Mexico in an amazing flying ship / device, and magically calling out a group of these giant creatures that normally live there. Entire lives in hiding, these giant snakes. And a group of 6 or 7 of these 100-foot-long giant serpents come out, and they're like 100 feet long. Just imagine this Atlantean Aztec character, Quetzalcoatl, having secret, lost technology that gave him the ability to completely control a half dozen of these really large, giant serpent anacondas. Imagine thousands of years ago this little Atlantean dude showing up in ancient Mexico in an amazing flying ship and magically calling out a group of these giant creatures that normally live their entire lives in hiding. A group of 6 or 7 of these 100-foot-long giant serpents. These are also as wide as many 100-foot-long trees. This little being would instantly be worshipped as a serpent god of old. There are actually Aztec descendants that are alive today that know some of these ancient legends and stories and passed them down from generation to generation, and many will share them with you who have met them and show interest in what they really believe and have to say. Some of these hidden and guarded texts speak of strange supernatural abilities of his ancient rulers / gods / angels, and they were able to command and have the ability to completely control some of these ancient genetically modified super animals, dragons, giant serpents, and dinosaurs. This is why some of these ancient rulers were known as serpent gods or dragon kings and lords, because of their seemingly magical abilities to control these huge beasts. In ancient times, long before the giant wars that caused the massive earthquakes that utterly destroyed the civilization we now call Atlantis, that all resulted in a giant flood. These ancient god-like rulers / fallen angels were using advanced technology to genetically modify everything. Technology in advanced medicines for much longer lives. technology that gave them complete control over some of the hybrid animals they created. Just imagine this Atlantean Aztec character, the Quetzalcoatl, having secret lost technology that gave him the ability to completely control a half dozen of these really large giant serpent anacondas. Imagine thousands of years ago this little Atlantean dude showing up in ancient Mexico in an amazing flying ship / device that magically calling out a group of these giant creatures that normally live their entire lives in hiding. A group of 6 or 7 of these 100-foot-long giant serpents. These are also as wide as many 100-foot-long trees. He would instantly be worshipped as the returning serpent god of old. There are actually Aztec descendants that are alive today that know some of these ancient legends and stories that have been passed down from generation to generation, and some will share them with you if you meet them and show interest in what they really believe and have to say. I mean, it's amazing to hear some of these stories if you really listen to what these people are saying to you. The Aztec Maya Olmec actually lived with some of the last remaining dragons that lived out in the wild just a few thousand years ago. There are also many more modern accounts of these dragons surviving the flood in very small numbers, only to be slowly killed over time by members of ancient royal families and very ancient secret groups and societies. It is said that St. George killed a dragon / dinosaur, and they first publicly accounted for this in the early 11th century. The Chinese know all about the ancient dragons / dinosaurs. Their account of the Yellow Emperor clearly talks about him using a herd of dragons to pull his chariots and royal carts. And there's like carvings of this. They are even depicted in ancient stone temples and ruins in Cambodia. The Ta Prohm Temple. I'll put that in here. And these carvings clearly depict a modern-day Stegosaurus. They have ancient documents and writings that talk about special medicines that require certain dragon parts, like dragon horns and stuff, dragon everything. They used to kill some of these genetically altered animals for chemicals that were found in their bones, horns, and hair. These ancient writings exist because they are records from the deep past and are pretty much true. I say this ancient practice led to the extinction and legends of one of the most beautiful creatures ever created, the unicorn. I totally say this was a real creature at one point, a long, long time ago. This animal once lived a long time ago. It was a magical and beautifully powerful beast and awe-inspiring to see. The memory of this animal is so strong that every culture on the planet speaks of it. There are writings that go into great detail about this wondrous creation and magical properties of its lovely horn. The ultimate demise of this amazing animal was its horn and the elite's lust for everything in the fabled time of Atlantis, or so the story goes in some of these weird writings. A little about this long-lost magical technology. This stuff is spoken about in all of these ancient hidden texts. It's carved into stone via statues and petroglyphs all over the planet. We have oral myths and legends that speak of ancient magical devices that belong to the gods of Atlantis. These are written about as best as could be described at the time in books like the Mahabharata, the Bible, the Book of Enoch, the Quran, the Babylonian cuneiform tablets, and many other places. We have legends of Excalibur, King Solomon's magic ring that gave him control over all of hell's demons. This ring is said to have helped him create his original temple by forcing demons into helping him. It is rumored that the Archangel Michael gave Solomon this ring. We have the long-lost Ark of the Covenant, the Jewish menorah, Aaron's rod, magic wands and staffs of the Egyptian high priests, the Spear of Destiny, the Mormon golden plates of Lucifer Moroni Morningstar and his garments, Zeus's lightning bolt, Poseidon's trident, Lord Shiva's nanotechnology Iron Man-like warform bodysuit. All of these things are examples of ancient lost Atlantean technology that was also lost during the catastrophe and being actively searched for to this very day by extremely ancient orders, governments, militaries, Nazis, and religious groups. These lost technologies, writings, and secrets are some of the very things the Knights Templar found under Solomon's Temple 1,000 years ago and spirited away to numerous locations all over the planet, including the United States of America long before it was given that name. I am starting to stray a little bit from the original topic of dinosaurs, and for this I'm sorry, but all of this is really connected and it's easy to stray off into weird tangents. Back to the soft tissue in the American dinosaur bones. This is true. Please watch the 60 Minutes video. There is also a man named Trey Smith who has a YouTube channel called God in a Nutshell. He has made a wonderful video completely exposing the soft tissue information and the dinosaurs really being young. In his channel's playlist, you will see a 30-minute long documentary called Jurassic. So go to God in a Nutshell on YouTube, their channel, and look for the video called Jurassic. Not everything in this video is correct, but he does a fantastic job interviewing the scientists who discovered the soft tissue and really does prove the young dinosaur thing. This 30-minute video is free to watch. He has dozens of documentaries he has made, and he has a much longer version on his website where you have to pay a small fee. This is worth doing, but not needed. He covers most of the important information in the free 30-minute version. The full Jurassic video is 2 hours and 19 minutes long. Both videos do an adequate job explaining what's happening and are worth watching. I would pay the money to watch the longer one. He has a lot of very good, very interesting videos on his site. Not all of it's totally correct, but he's just showing you some pretty fascinating stuff, this guy is. There are many other accounts of dinosaurs surviving to this very day, but people accuse these people of being crazy or call the possible dinosaur sightings things like the Loch Ness Monster instead of a plesiosaur, or a thunderbird instead of a pterodactyl. The pterodactyl sightings are absolutely fascinating and happen all over the world. If one of the ancient hybrid animals / dragons / dinosaurs were to have survived the destruction, collapse of Atlantis and outlasted the flood, it would definitely be this beast. So random sightings of it in modern day in deep forests and places like Antarctica would be expected and are the norm. I'm probably going to stop this essay here. I'm rambling on and stray off topic here, and there are but all the topics are really connected, so it's easy to start talking about dinosaurs and end up talking about lost underground cities and magical rings and super technology. If you guys have any questions, feel free to email me. Written by James Mazzeo. So I'm going to expand on this one a little bit. So I really encourage you to go watch the video number 2 and number 4. And especially number 4. Number 4 deals with a lot of the underground city stuff with the Aztecs. And how it does connect to Area 51, and that's sort of what they're hiding there and in other military bases. They're hiding a lot of the evidence and proof of these underground cities that they have found and accessed and found lost technology in. And the dinosaurs were above ground. And you can learn this in some of these weird writings. These were their food supply and weird animals that they created. And that's why they were eating the megafaunas and stuff. It said there was a war, and that's why there's a huge amount of remains, like a dinosaur national monument. And there are so many more dinosaur bones than they tell you. It's unbelievable. You're not allowed to really go to these areas. And there's also weird petroglyphs that show Native Americans riding on the back or fighting and killing dinosaurs. And all of these are on very protected areas, and like Dinosaur National Monument, and on people's private ranches. And there are some pictures of them, and I'll show you some of them, but there's a lot more. And there are huge piles of dinosaur bones in some of these protected places. And if you go in there and you actually dig in there and steal some of these dinosaur bones, take them home and cut them open, you will see the soft tissue for yourself. That's why they're protected and you can't go there. They're limiting access to the proof. They want you to stay away from certain places that have all this evidence and proof of this. But they do. They cut into like the Triceratops horn, and they have found soft tissues in the horns and in the bones, a lot of weird places. So there's videos all over online that prove this. So I highly encourage you to look into all of this, because I need to go way more into this, and I'm going to show you a lot of pictures that show the Aztecs and them riding on dinosaurs. Literally, how would they know that the dinosaurs, what they even look like? If we found dinosaur bones for the first time 400 years ago, and before that we didn't even know about them, how are there carvings of Triceratops and Stegosauruses on temples in other countries like Cambodia and stuff that are thousands of years old? How are they there? How are there drawings and pictures of Aztecs and Mexicans riding on dinosaurs' backs that look totally how they're supposed to look? They look like what we have in the museums, but with skin and crudely drawn on pottery that's 1,000 years old or more. How do we have this if we discovered dinosaurs 400 years ago, like the official story? That don't make no sense. They were around. I mean, that's why you see like on a bunch of royal crests and stuff, and they're slaying giant serpents and dragons. Some of this was actually like a ritual that some elite like kings and stuff hundreds and hundreds of years ago, they would go out and kill one of these mythical dinosaurs where they knew where they lived, and it was like a rite of passage. And they even talk about it in the old writings, how they would go out and slay dragons, and they're talking about dinosaurs. So it's a very interesting topic, and there's a lot of proof. There's a lot of stuff that proves this, what I'm saying, and totally disproves the nonsense they're saying. They don't want you to know that these are much younger than they are, and they're talked about in the Bible and all these weird writings, and they call them the genetically modified animals and stuff, the perverted animals. So, okay. And, if you like this, please like, share, and subscribe. Well, thank you for watching and listening. If you have any questions or comments, put them in the comments or come join me at the group. I'd love to hear from you. There's still a lot more to this. I mean, this is a fascinating topic. But I'm going to stop here, and I'll talk to you next time. Peace. One more thing, I would like to give a big shout out to Greg. He's a group member, and he's about to have a surgery on Thursday, and I just want him to know that we're thinking about him, and everybody in the group is praying for him, and we hope he has a quick recovery and he's okay. And thanks for watching, and talk to you later. Peace. Till next time.